Call the meeting to order.
Thank you, Mayor. This is your March workshop, and one of the topics you wanted to discuss this year at a workshop was the CAT Silver Line project.
I've seen the agenda for the meeting.
Can you mute them?
I think I'm kicking off, right?
Wasn't sure. Could be right.
But I think somebody is, the town is going to say something.
Andy, can you hear us? So one of the topics you wanted to discuss was the CAT Silver Line transit plan, as well as the transit-oriented development that would go along with that, so that we reimagine the Wilson Boulevard corridor. So we've got representatives from CATS here virtually with us. They're still not meeting in person, but they are graciously going to join us from their home offices. So I will turn it over to Tiffany Farah, who has been working on both the light rail and the TOD overlay plan to talk about this and introduce the team.
So joining us to speak is Andy Mock, Senior Project Manager for the Lynx Silver Line, as well as John Howard with CATS, who will be sharing with us a little bit about the transit-oriented development component and answering any questions you have related to that. I believe there are several other members of the CATS team that are going to be present on the call in case their areas of expertise arise, specifically to be named
Can people hear me? Can people hear me?
And so with that, eager to speak is Andy Mock. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Andy to start off on the preliminary staff recommendations for the proposal.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Oh, great, thank you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great, thank you.
Go ahead, Andy.
Andy, you're on mute.
Thank you.
Andy, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, it was quiet for a while. I couldn't tell if I was good to go. But I thank you for the introduction, and thank you to the town council for having us out for a presentation on the very important project for the Lynx Silver Line project. Can people see the screen? Great, so Jenna is nodding so we can see the screen. We're going to do a couple presentations. I'm going to do a presentation about the preliminary staff recommendation and what we intend to go to the Metropolitan Transit Commission, what we've received, the alternative that we've received public feedback on through our community meetings. And then I'm going to hand the presentation over to John Howard, who is our TOD project manager, who will talk about the land use part of it and the vision of the areas around the stations. So before I get in too deeply into the weeds on the presentation, take a moment to kind of introduce myself, because I don't know if I've ever actually been in front of the City of Belmont's board before. My name is Andy Mock. I'm the Senior Project Manager for CATS. I've worked for CATS for 20 years on light rail implementation in Charlotte. With me today is Jenna Nichols. She's the Deputy Project Manager for the Lynx Silver Line project. Also a lot of experience with light rail. We also have John Howard, a TOD Project Manager, who will give the second part of the presentation. Jason Lawrence, our Rail Trail Project Manager, who can talk a little bit about Rail Trail. He's also been doing a lot of system planning in the City of Belmont and through the entire system plan update in 2019, so it might be a familiar face. and Ajanelle Poole, who's our public information officer, and who does coordinates all the outreach, and Dilek McKnight, our transportation planner, who's assisting all the studies moving forward. So thank you for allowing us the time to give that brief introduction. So real simple agenda tonight. Just give a brief overview of the alignment that we are putting forward for the Metropolitan Transit Commission, and also any opportunity for any Q&A that the board or the town might have. So it's always good to kind of show where we are at the moment in the lifespan of a project like this. We're at the very beginning of this process, really. It's we call this pre-project development. It's before we enter into the formal federal funding and environmental pipeline. So really, we're evaluating the alignment and doing LPA refinement. LPA is a acronym, stands for locally preferred alternative. I'm going to use that a lot, the term LPA. It really just means it is the direction of our governing board for what project we are pursuing, what variation of the Silver Line that we're pursuing. And so with this, what we've really been focused on over the last year is refining the LPA, which was initially adopted in 2019, and going through an evaluation of benefits and risks to try to really improve that project as much as possible, so we can put the best project forward to compete for federal funds, and also that we can operate best and fund and maintain and all those sort of things. So I'll talk about that, and we'll talk a little bit about adjustments that we're proposing as part of this LPA refinement process. After we adopt the alignment that we plan to do later on this spring, we'll then go forward with more detailed environmental engineering work, as well as start to go through the TOD stationary planning process, which will be led by John, and start to look at those land use improvements around the stations. We've also completed early scoping, which is a federal environmental process. Really, it's kind of a first look at by the federal permitting agencies to see if there's any sort of red flags or any sort of major concerns that would be raised early on before we go too far, so they can be addressed. And we're heading towards the MTC adoption of the LPA. Again, once we have that, then we'll have more certainty on where the alignment in the station is, and we can really proceed with some of the more detailed studies that really need to be complete before we can take into the next step, which is the project development step. And that's where we really get our complete our environmental work, complete our design work, and have a cost estimates which will be used for the full funding grant agreement, which is our contract with the federal government to fund some aspect of the project. So when we look at, and just to kind of remind folks, and I hope folks were able to join any one of the 6 virtual public meetings that we had over the last month. We had one in Focus Area 1, which is the Belmont area. And so really what we talked a lot about is how we make decisions and how we evaluate one align versus another. And I won't go into the whole detail of that because it's somewhat lengthy, but it's really, when we look at the initial locally preferred alternative that was adopted in 2019, we're trying to come up with or verify that is the alignment that we want to pursue, or propose any adjustments based on an evaluation of benefits and risks. So we want to maximize the benefits and minimize the risks. So we want to make sure we put forward a project that's competitive from a travel time perspective. Everybody wants a fast, reliable transit trip, and that's something we really strive for. So that's one of the key benefits we're looking for. We want to make sure that there's good local connectivity, making sure that people can get from their homes to their job or entertainment or education opportunities via light rail. And we want to make sure the areas around the station have opportunities for transit-oriented development to really create those great places. However, we also want to proceed in a way that puts us in the best position to implement a project. So we want to be careful and cautious about managing our risks. So we want to make sure we're putting forward a project that's cost is front of mind, as far as the capital costs and the operating costs, because not only do we need to be able to afford this project to build it, but we also need to be able to afford to maintain and operate on a daily basis. Environmental considerations are very important, as this project will go through a federal a federal review to really deliver the project through an FTA grant. So getting ahead of those environmental considerations is key. And also coordination with others, and that's really ties to a lot of the many projects that are going on related to the NCDOT, many railroad projects, and every other entities along the line. We want to make sure that we're well coordinated with all these projects, so all projects can move forward in a similar time frame without being held up by one or the other. So when we evaluate our benefits and risks, when we look at one line versus another, if the alignment with the most benefit also has the least risk, then that's you know, as much of a slam dunk as we can expect. That's kind of what we're shooting for. That's not always the case. We don't always get that. And so in the cases where the most benefit and the least risk aren't the same, then it's a kind of a value decision about whether the benefits are worth the risk. Or if not, then you stick with the least risk option, and that you can move forward in that way. Or you move forward with an accepting the risks that could be there. And so that's just a little bit of an insight for how we make decisions on the silver line. And just jumping right into it, the map you see on the screen right now is the preliminary staff recommendation that we're taking to the Metropolitan Transit Commission. Actually, next week will be the information item. And so in the area of the Belmont area is really what we call Focus Area 1. It just says to kind of spend a minute explaining what this map really shows. The focus areas aren't intended to be any sort of construction sequence or phase. It's really just a way to break up the project into more digestible pieces, because the project is so big. It's 26 miles long, and it's really almost impossible for the public to really understand all of it at once. So we broke it up into 6 pieces and really created a geography-based public engagement campaign based on smaller bites. And I think that's been pretty successful. So we have 6 different public meetings based on 6 different focus areas. So just want to take a moment to explain that. We have 29 stations. We have 1 maintenance facility that we need to actually operate the system. And so the focus area 1 spans the whole way from the city of Belmont and down to I-485 near the airport. And from there, it goes, continues following along Wilkinson Boulevard the whole way to Morris Field, and then it deviates off and then follows the railroad, Norfolk Southern Railroad, from Morris Field the whole way into Center City, goes around the northern side of Center City, then out Independence Boulevard, the whole way to the Village Lake area, where it then transitions from Village Lake, from Independence over to Monroe Road, into the town of Matthews, across I-485, and then into Stallings and Indian Trail. So that's the high level view of the preliminary staff recommendation that we're putting forward. So the next couple slides we'll get into a little bit more detail, more focus on the Belmont area. Really, but as a starting place, I wanted to kind of show our where we started from. When we started this process a little over a year ago, the locally preferred alternative, which was adopted in 2019 through the system plan update, had a station in Belmont, but it was at Park Street. And that was just an issue of needing some more time to coordinate with the town and with Belmont Abbey, and having a good solid solution, understanding of some improvements around Park Street. I think when we really started this project, we wanted to evaluate some different ways to activate the station and create some better opportunities for transit-oriented development around the station. So this was kind of the starting place, and when we started our coordination with the towns and with the local stakeholders. But now what you see right now is a map of our preliminary staff recommendation that we sent out, and this was out through a mailer that was sent out, actually a hard copy mailer that was sent out to anyone within a half mile of the light rail alignment. And really what this shows is the purple line extending beyond Park with a station near Holly Avenue. And that's in coordination with Belmont Abbey and the town through our early coordination with the stakeholders. We felt like there were some real opportunities for some great development opportunities in that location, and really looking at better ways to connect the station to the surrounding area. This map, just to kind of explain what this map also shows, the purple line again is our refined locally preferred alternative. The gray lines, you'll see some gray lines here and there. Those are alignments that we have evaluated but are not putting forward at this time. If you see a yellow triangle with a exclamation mark, that shows a change in the LPA that was adopted in 2019. And then these boxes kind of show and describe that change. So just to describe, we did move the station from Park Street up to Holly Avenue, really as a way, and really won the day in our evaluation of benefits and risks was the development benefits that could be seen at the Holly Avenue station, as well as having better connections to the station because you're situated right between Main and Park Street. From there, the Silver Line then follows along the northern side over Park Street, and it continues along the northern side of Wilkinson Boulevard, the whole way and across the river. We are planning to cross the Catawba River on a separate bridge from the NCDOT Wilkinson Boulevard bridge replacement, so that we're in our early coordination with NCDOT, we felt like it was a better investment to be on a separate structure. From after the bridge, we then go up and over Wilkinson Boulevard and traverse along the southern side. And that's primarily because there's a lot of industrial businesses along this northern side with a lot of major driveways that we had some concerns about crossing with the light rail at this point. So we bridged over to the southern side with a station at Sam Wilson up to I-485, and then we transition back to the northern side. So there will be quite a few bridges going over Wilkinson Boulevard back and forth to try to minimize impacts as much as possible. To take a moment, and I have some slides with a little more details with aerial photography, but just to talk about our preliminary public input. This is what we've received as of March 5th. So we did spend a good bit of energy on outreach and having mailers in both English and Spanish, yard signs, hard copy mailers. Of course, we did a lot of social media and PIO outreach, public information officer outreach to all the communities, as well as dropping information off at public areas. And we also did recordings that were available on YouTube of all the public meetings. We had six public meetings that were all available via YouTube with live Q&A. One of the big focuses was to really come up with a better survey, a better way to reach out to people so they could provide us input. And as of the closing of the survey on March 11th, we've had about 2,000 survey participants, which is much, much more than we had in our second round. And that was a real success. We had 110 virtual public meeting attendees in Focus Area 1. So probably one of the highest amount of attendees really weighing in, really a lot of great interest from the Belmont and Gaston County area about getting access to those public meetings so they can have some input. Regarding what we heard, and the numbers across the top are what we've heard as a whole. So in a presentation of our public meeting, of our preliminary staff recommendation, this goes for the entire 26 miles. 80% of the survey participants were in support of the preliminary staff recommendations. Roughly 10%, it's a little over 80, it's probably closer to 83. We're still working through the numbers. About 10% of the participants were opposed to those recommendations. Within Focus Area 1, less than 6% of that 10%. So we're talking, like 12 comments were opposed in the Focus Area 1 of the 2,000. Some of these are direct quotes, which we kind of picked out just to kind of be representative of what we've heard. So a lot of good, a lot of positive about Gaston County. Desperately needs another option for transit in Mecklenburg County. The Silver Line would be a perfect access to airport uptown. Really looking forward to this in Belmont. A lot of good comments about providing mode choice and opportunities for new options for people to get to the airport or to Panthers games. So a lot of good comments like that. But we did receive some rather pointed negative comments. Don't want rail in Belmont, period. So I'd say those were the minority, but there certainly were some people making those sort of comments. So just wanted to show that. Getting into the kind of the aerial photography and kind of showing the alignment as it relates to the ground. I'll just briefly do this one slide. So starting here at Holly Avenue, and this is Caldwell Farms. The station would be in this area between the Walmart and Wilkinson Boulevard. We anticipate we'd have a parking garage in this area to collect parking riders who might be getting off at 85 or Wilkinson Boulevard, or maybe on Park or Main, to come collect to get into a parking garage and then get onto Light Rail Station and go wherever they're going to go. We would then follow along the northern side and bridge over Holly Avenue, follow along the northern side and over Park Street. So we would bridge over Park Street to stay out of the ambient traffic along that intersection. And then we would follow, the Silver Line would then follow along the northern side of Wilkinson Boulevard, behind the existing curb, the whole way down to the river, and then cross on a separate structure from the NCDOT project over to the Moores Chapel Loop area. At this point, then the Silver Line would then just go cross back over to the south side and then follow that along the southern edge. You see all this Amazon, there's a couple Amazon facilities here, significant truck traffic that we're trying to avoid, much less on the southern side. And then we would cross back for the I-45 interchange. So where we're going as far as our next steps as relates to the Silver Line, we've now completed our round 3 of public engagement, and we are putting together our presentation for the Metropolitan Transit Commission next week, next Wednesday night, and where we will present our preliminary staff recommendation for information, and then come back to them April 28th for adoption. After that, then we'll take forward that adopted alignment and its adopted stations and advance our light rail design, environmental surveying, stationary planning and rail trail alignment, and then also work through the definition of how the rail trail alignment will work with the Silver Line, and also come up with some affordable housing and other area planning and land use recommendations. And so that's the end of my presentation. Is there any questions? Let me stop sharing for a moment. Excuse me about that? Excuse me? Yeah, the plan would be for us to, yeah, we would bridge over Park Street. It would be on piers. There would be an abutment. There'd be an abutment and there'd be a piers over Park Street before we land on the other side. I'm hearing an echo. Okay, great. I'll stick around. If anything comes up, just let me know, okay?
Okay, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
So thanks, Andy. Yeah, great. Thanks, Andy. My name is John Howard. I'm with the Silver Line TOD team. I'm going to share my screen and my presentation. Okay. Thanks again for having us join you today. I'm going to talk about the Silver Line Transit-Oriented Development Study. I'll say TOD for short, just for brevity. Let's see. Here we go. So I'll give you an overview of the TOD study, the scope. I'll talk about what TOD is and our deliverables and the project overall and our work to date so far and how we're going to move forward after the LPA is adopted next month. So again, there's 3 different studies going on at about the same time. We have what Andy just talked about, the Silver Line design scope. We also have the rail trail study and also the Silver Line TOD study. You all helped us apply for the FTA grant for the TOD study, so thank you very much for that partnership, along with the cities and towns between Belmont and Gastonia. PowerPoint's acting a little funny today. Sorry, my presentation is not advancing. Hold on 1 second, please. Oh, there you go. So I'll give you an overview of the, again, of the TOD study. This plan is a little bit different. We've done TOD plans around the Blue Line and the Blue Line extension, but what makes us a little bit unique and different is that, one, we're going to take some lessons learned from the Blue Line and BLE, Blue Line extension. Also, we're going to look at displacement and gentrification issues that occurred along the Blue Line. We did not proactively plan for that, so we're doing that a little bit more right now. And also talk about equity, something that kind of ties in with displacement and also access to different resources. And also we're going to talk about affordable housing. Obviously, this is an issue that's affecting all of us in the region, so we'll talk about strategies for that as well. And the team's grown a little bit. All the city departments in the city of Charlotte, of course, our friends Gaston County, and also the towns of Matthews, Stallings, and Indian Trail, and also Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation. It's not just about development, but also about open space and parks around the stations are important as well. So some of the questions that we're asking ourselves is, one, what kind of place do we want this to be? Normally, really good stations have a lot of diversity in terms of land uses and different types of station areas, so we'll talk about that. And again, how ready is the corridor for TOD? So we'll have a market and affordable housing assessment as part of the plan. And also, what improvements are going to take place, what capital improvements are going to take place as far as sidewalks, streets, other important roadways and connections, make sure that our stations are well connected. So again, success is more than just designing for the train, getting from point A to point B. We also need to look at mobility, make sure we have safe places for people to walk and bike, look at land uses that are around the station, make sure that we can support that through ridership, and again, a nice diversity of uses. Community design, which is very important to us in the city of Belmont, work with you all as far as what your vision is for community character, and also equity, as I mentioned before. So we also want to, again, we want to make sure that we enhance connectivity and we build in, again, the right systems for walking and for driving and biking to the stations and around the stations, as well as encouraging transportive development. That is a complementary use of land uses. Not all stations are going to be the same, though. If you look at the Blue Line and BLE, each one has its own character. So we'll talk about that with the project team and the citizens of Belmont. And also enhance community identity. Again, looking at your previous plans and your work, and look at how you want to have your city highlighted in the plan. Because it's not Charlotte. We have our own process here, but also want to respect the planning efforts that you all have done in the past. And again, expanding opportunities. That's getting folks to and from places of employment, education opportunities, and also, again, have a very healthy place to live, an equitable place to live. But it's more about affordable housing. We talk a lot about that, but it's also about retaining businesses and building for small business and large businesses. And again, looking at providing access for all. So again, getting people to and from where they need to get to. So part of our study, again, is a market assessment. We have not done a deep dive into Belmont yet, but that'll be part of our TOD scope as well. And again, to assess the TOD market readiness for the corridor. And again, to identify potential sites for great redevelopment. As you saw from Andy's presentation, we're going to end just to the west of Park Street. There's a lot of opportunities there for redevelopment and working with Belmont Abbey and again, the city of Belmont itself. And also looking at how can we develop corridor preservation strategies. That is protecting the corridor width, if you will, for the train. So part of our work also looking at, again, station location and alignments. We're helping the design team with that. Looking at stationary concepts, again, what do we want to not just redevelop, but also what do we want to protect and preserve. And then we'll do demonstration station area plan for the area right around Park Street, and also have a station area topology manual that'll all be part of the planning effort. And also tools to get TOD ready for your jurisdiction. So we've done some interviews with the City of Belmont staff and Gastonia staff about the zoning regulations that they have now, and how can we get those ready for the next chapter of TOD development and construction. So again, part of this too is looking at a affordable housing assessment and talking about how can we retain property around the station areas for housing. I know we have our own housing services department in Charlotte, but also talk with you all about how maybe you can look at this moving forward for your jurisdiction. And again, we'll outline capital improvements. Again, that's streets, connections, parks and open spaces. Make sure we build out a really well-connected station area around the stations. And also part of this too, looking at potential joint use development strategies, whereas we could partner with other private business perhaps to look at how we can leverage possibilities for affordable housing. So we're going to touch on many different projects going on now. The city's undergoing their 2040 comprehensive plan. Again, we already talked about working with Silverline design team and the rail trail, but also talking with Connect Beyond, the regional transit plan, that we're meeting with those folks, and again, talking about TOD and getting transportive ready for the corridor itself. Some of our work to date, we had a 8-day urban design workshop that was pre-COVID, where we kind of sat down and sketched out some different alternatives and station area concepts. Also, we worked with the design team to provide TOD metrics for the alignment. And also, we're just got through wrapping up a corridor-wide existing conditions assessment. So we're working on that right now. Some of our key findings, I kind of mentioned this already before. The corridor has a variety of characters and opportunities. There's also a strong desire for equity and affordable housing and mixed income housing. Strong support for a bike ped trail. Again, TOD here would be different than what's happening in South End and Charlotte, or even the Blue Line extension around North Davidson Street area. It'll look probably look a lot different than that in Belmont. And understanding that we have a lot of infrastructure challenges along the corridor, and hopefully we can get investment that creates some really, really good mixed-use developments along the corridor. So we're taking a look as well with other planning efforts to build a better boulevard, the previous study that you all worked on a few years ago. Also looking at City of Belmont's transit plan, transportation plan, and again, working with our partners like Belmont Abbey and others to look at what community character means to you all and how to preserve, again, what's important for you. These are some snippets from the existing conditions report. Again, we kind of talked about the different alignment options, starting with the LPA, and then winding up where we are now in the red box is just across Park Street on the western side. And again, just kind of we're also looking at currently vacant or underutilized properties. There are quite a few around here, so that's a good thing for us to kind of rethink how we could re-envision the area around the station. And at a very, very high level, just looking at what that could look like. Very conceptual, nothing, of course, is finalized or decided, but again, looking at what a well-connected station area could look like, looking at general urban forms, infrastructure needs, local connections, and where those are going to be most important to make this very successful station. And again, nothing's been determined yet, but just an example of a cross section that could look like Wilson Boulevard if you're side running and you've got your planted medians, your pedestrian areas, pedestrian zones, and then the six travel lanes. So just showing the building frontages right behind the sidewalks. Again, a very urban type environment. These are examples of, in Charlotte, on the left is a parking deck at the University City Boulevard station with ground floor commercial uses. So we're getting, trying to get more those mixed, again, vertical mixed uses as well, even in our parking garages. On the right, just some examples of some multifamily and mixed use that we're getting along the corridor now. This is on Tryon Street going towards the university. So we found some examples of what this could look like to have a similar jurisdiction just on outside of a major city. This is the Central Maryland LRT project, about 7 miles from downtown Baltimore. And again, the TOD planning process for Mount Washington really did guide future development for that area. Again, they have a walk-up station. They've got some park and ride with meter parking about 1 mile north of this area. As you can see at bottom right, again, the character doesn't have to always be a high density development. It can be more lower scale in places. Doing pretty good for a while there. Now my PowerPoint is taking a break again, so bear with me for 1 second. Okay, here we go. So again, they're seeing kind of what you're seeing too in Belmont, the reuse of older buildings that are being retrofitted for new uses. And again, just looking at how it can repurpose older, maybe even out-of-date buildings that can make them more modern. This is Hillsboro, Oregon. This is just outside of Portland, Oregon. This is an aerial shot from 1990, population of 39,000. And the station is about right here in the middle of the presentation, the Orenco station. Fast forward about 10 years, population almost doubles to 74,000 people. And you can see now how it's starting to fill out now. This is the previous from 1990. And then now you see neighborhoods being built, block structure is more connected. And just see how the form is still maturing. That's just 2019. Population now is about 90,000. So again, filling in all the gaps of the existing vacant underused properties. So again, just some TOD basics. Buildings are oriented to the nearby streets and thoroughfares. Also, employers are jumping in and offering shuttle service to the transit station. Housing costs around the station are, as you can imagine, higher than the regional average. And the master plan really did guide how this is all going to look. So the bottom images here are actual images of what got built around the station. There we go. And just to wrap up, some of our next steps, again, as Andy mentioned before, going to the MTC, hopefully for a decision in April. And with that, we'll start doing our area planning work with our consultants, Kittleson and Associates, and start scheduling meeting times to meet back with you all when we start that process, probably in the late spring, probably summer of this year. And then we'll wrap up with the study around the end of the year, beginning of next year. And with that, I'll be glad to take any questions that y'all might have.
I have a question. Can you hear me? Maybe not.
Hello,
Hello?
John.
Okay, hearing none, I can turn it back
Question?
over to you all. Okay, hearing none, I can turn it back over to you all.
Huh. Hello?
Hello,
Hello?
John.
I can hear you.
Question.
Yes.
Okay. Um, we've sort of been pushing, as a council, the multifamily, more denser housing towards the corridor, or that's our policy or our intention. Is that consistent with what you think a TOD should look like in that area?
Great question, and absolutely. If any place could probably handle that kind of density, would be the major thoroughfare like Wilson Boulevard. We have talked to your planning staff about some new projects that are coming online in Belmont, so we appreciate your support in trying to increase whatever density numbers make sense for you all. But I would say yes, absolutely. We want to say keep the multifamily higher density along major thoroughfare and not quite into the single family. We try to make sure we don't rezone property that's single family to multifamily. So we would want to protect your established neighborhoods, but maybe focus it more, like you're saying, more on major thoroughfares. So I haven't worked on the trolley project very closely. Maybe if Jason or Andy have more background on that one, but the station would still be located right there near Park Street. So we would look for you all to kind of figure out, help us how we connect with that trolley system.
Yeah, so Jason might have some history on this. I was looking at the maps of the trolley system earlier today, and so it's it's about a 5-minute walk. The trolley stop at Maine would be about a 5-minute walk from the station, which is very is very walkable, very within our station area. So I think with some reasonable improvements, pedestrian improvements along Wilkinson Boulevard, that could be a very comfortable walk for folks. I'll hand it over to Jason, see if he has any thoughts.
Yeah, I would just echo that, Andy. I think that as part of the upcoming station area work and planning for all the connections to make the station work well at Park Street would be that dialogue. What is that interaction? And I do think it would be some kind of pedestrian improvements from where the trolley crosses there at 74 on its way to Belmont Abbey, with its connection to the station through pedestrian improvements.
I want to say that I appreciate the thought and the foresight into making sure that there's affordable housing in the area, and taking that into account, because we've had some discussions about that as well, and understanding how it's a lot of times it's easier said than done. So I appreciate that aspect and the vision that's going into that, and hopefully it'll lead to some good housing options.
Yeah, great. Appreciate that.
Andy or John, this is Adrian Miller. You had mentioned that you're going to go to the MTC in April with your staff recommendation. Is there anything that you need from the Belmont City Council in support of your LPA or the process so far?
Yeah, so thank you, Adrian. So we're going for information next week, and we're going for action. We are working with all the jurisdictions and towns along the scope, the limits of it, and any resolution or statements of support would certainly, I think that we would appreciate that going into that action, so we could demonstrate that we've been working closely with the towns and that we're reflecting what the town's visions of what they're trying to accomplish. So that's something that we are seeking from our partnering jurisdictions.
And Jason and everybody else on the WebEx, thank you for your time this afternoon. We don't have any other questions for you, so we do appreciate your joining us via WebEx this afternoon.
Great. Great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
April 5th.
Their next meeting,
The MPC meeting?
the MTC, I believe, is the 24th or the 28th.
Okay,
But our next city council meeting will be
before theirs, okay.
voting.
Okay,
Then yes.
all right.
We need to shut all that stuff off now.
We're still live streaming on our YouTube channel.
I kind of like the godlike reverb.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, I feel like Moses.
Here are the 10 commandments of development.
So if the council's in agreement, we can have a resolution of support in favor of the locally preferred alternative,
I
or
think it'd
local
be a
preferred
game
alignment.
changer for us, though. I think it'd be good.
I'm not seeing any opposition to having that and put on the consent agenda, because your April meeting may be a doozy. So we'll put that on the consent agenda.
Will riddle me this. The last time we talked about that, we were considering putting Del Webb as sort of like substituting for our workshop and have it sort of a special meeting with specifically Del Webb on the agenda and dealing with everything else at the regular meeting. Is that still the plan?
I proposed that as an option for you and didn't get any feedback, so,
Oh, I like that idea.
okay.
Yeah, I sort of thought, oh, yeah, that's, I didn't realize you were, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I
I
do
don't,
too.
I don't do anything without y'all telling me
Oh,
it's
well.
okay to do.
I thought
I
that
thought
was
we
sort
had
of,
consensus to do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
does that work with your time frame to? Okay, so then the April workshop then would be an April special meeting for a public hearing for the rezoning and then consider the ordinance for the Del Webb project.
Would it be at a regular time, or is that, should we make it at 6 instead? I mean, I just don't know if there's people from the public that are going to want to come and speak.
That's a
Whether
good
4
point.
o'clock would be, is something that would,
We could do that at
Conflict with
6,
the
that
work.
would be a normal council time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's,
Yeah, and if it's the only thing on the agenda,
yeah.
I don't see that going on all night. Well, famous last words, I guess, but yeah.
Hey, Adrian, if they build a bridge over Wilkinson Boulevard, or over Park Street rather, then they won't have to be get a Michigan left over there.
We'll see.
Eliminate that.
and Adrian, when you talk to them, make sure they realize it's not for lack of interest that we didn't ask questions. I attended the focus group, so a lot of this was covered there, and how they're going to bridge over Old Dowd, that kind of thing. So they covered in detail a huge amount of that. So
Yeah.
there was no need to ask more questions.
Yeah. The only thing I was interested in was the trolley.
Okay.
You know, but I think they covered that.
And I don't know that we're gonna be able to get them perfectly aligned with the station at Main Street in the Violet Shopping Center, but a station within a 5-minute walk certainly could help and would more activate that trolley service than just, a novelty trolley without the light rail.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
But they were talking about pedestrian improvements. That whole area, because of what we've done with the sidewalks, there shouldn't be a huge amount, I would not think.
Yes.
Well, they're probably talking about, I imagine, a crosswalk or something across 74,
Yeah.
because that doesn't.
Well, eventually
But
we
it's
want to
gonna be
get
on
the
that
trolley
side.
over 74.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the rail trail would be your bike ped crossing of Wilkinson at Main Street, and then the trolley with it. So that you could then have, so theoretically, you could get off the station in Belmont, and it'd be located somewhere near kind of the Wilkinson frontage of Lowe's Walmart. You could either walk or ride a bike up to Main Street and then get on the rail trail
Yeah.
downtown, or hop on the trolley coming downtown.
Well, you could have somebody that has a shuttle take people there.
Sure.
That'd be good business.
Sure.
Adrian, there was a plan, I guess theoretical, I don't know how
Be
theoretical.
good for a shuttle, wouldn't
The
it?
DOT put out there to bridge Park Street over Wilkinson at one time. So I don't know if that's still an active plan, but the two would be in conflict, would they not?
I thought
They would be, you're
Park
right.
Street was going to be like a more, what do you call it, like a unimpeded flow. Isn't that the current plan?
So there's two plans. There's the current plan, and Tiffany, please correct me if I get this wrong. The current plan and all the modeling assumes just an intersection improvement of Wilkinson and Park Street. And if that's the case, then that's a funded project in the STIP process. So if that's the case, then the light rail would bridge over Park Street. We've had a second request for what Councilman Turner's talking about, which is Park Street going over Wilkinson as an overpass.
Yep.
So you'd have unimpeded flow of both Park Street and Wilkinson, and that's not funded yet. If that gets funded, that would change the light rail plan, because then you would have two bridges in the same location. Obviously, it's not going to work. So they're right now, all the studies are being done on the current plan of just an intersection improvement. If DOT instead funds kind of that overpass, then we'll have to go and look at all that again.
The main thing is that the traffic flows on the boulevard, and also the light rail can take a lot of people to Charlotte. That's
Yeah,
the main
and
thing.
as you all know, there are several intersection improvements already funded for Wilson. We want to make sure that none of those are in conflict with what the light rail is doing,
Right.
both from a transportation standpoint, but also from the TOD and placemaking standpoint.
Okay.
So lots of partners to work with
Yes.
in this corridor.
It's one of the multi-jurisdictional, that's a goal of the comprehensive land use plan. Yes,
This corridor is hitting all of that.
good. Well, more boxes to check.
All right.
Do we need to go into closed session now?
Yes, that is all that we have for the CAT Silver Line and TOD. So we need to have a closed
Can we
session
get a
and
motion?
ask the police chief to join us for the closed session.
I'd move to go into closed session with Police Chief Chad Hawkins in joining us for that.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're in closed session.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.